All right, welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the 128th episode of PsiOp Radio, live from Austin, Texas. I am Smiles Lewis.
And I'm Mack White.
And our guest tonight is Glen Yeadon, the author of Nazi Hydra in America, Suppressed History of a Century. Glen, are you there?
Hello, Glen.
Yes, I am.
Hi there. Welcome to the show.
Good evening.
Glen, did I get your last name right?
It's Yeadon.
Yeadon, all right. Well, thank you so much for being our guest tonight. It's a pleasure to have you.
Well, it's a pleasure to be on. Thank you.
Your book is really great. I'll tell you what, this is a big book with a lot of information in it, but it's very readable. And for such a complex story, it's so well written, it really comes across very clearly. I would say that this is really a riveting read. And, I thought I knew everything you needed to know about the U.S. Industrialist connection to the Nazis, Prescott Bush, and so forth, and Operation Paperclip. But this was full of things I didn't know. And so I highly recommend this to anyone. It is a really good a resource because it really brings together so much information about this hydra-headed beast that we call the Nazis, or fascism. And I was thinking, just to get things started here, fascism is a word that is so often used, but not entirely understood. It's often misused. And could you give us a good definition of what fascism is?
Probably the best definition would be a government that is controlled or ruled by an elite core or a core of corporations. That's probably the best you could do with it.
Mm-hmm.
Again, that's not, it's awfully difficult giving a precise definitions because when did Nazi, I used it as a sample in the book, when did Germany go Nazi? When did they go to fascism? It wasn't with the election of Hitler. It was, it was well on the road to fascism before Hitler took over.
Mm-hmm.
It started with Hindenburg, where he started allowing the presidents in the late 20s and early 30s to rule by decree because the parliament was so fractured they couldn't pass anything. It's sort of like our Congress today.
Similar to the executive branch's use of executive orders now, where the president can just...
Exactly, because Congress is so deadlocked over partisan bickering, it can't do anything, so there's been George Bush used executive orders extensively.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we worry about those executive orders because they reveal all sorts of plans that the government has in the event of emergencies, which, these emergencies often seem to have more to do with rounding up political dissidents. And that's, in fact, what happened in Nazi Germany.
Yeah, exactly. And not only that, but if anybody thinks it's crazy, there was 300,000 or 300 million given to Halliburton to remodel the camps in the budget. So it's not just a lone nut, wild-eyed with these camps. They do exist.
And what your book really demonstrates is that there is a direct link between these Halliburton-built camps and the camps at Auschwitz and Dachau. There's a diagram at the beginning of the book, The Bush Regime and the Nazi Family Tree, which is a really good diagram because it gives you a picture as best as you can in a diagram, this story, this complex story, which really began with the robber barons around the turn of the century, the Rockefellers. How did this Nazi menace, this Third Reich, get started? It looks to me like its origins, the ones that we read about in history books and we see in documentaries, it all started in Germany. But the roots to the U.S. are very deep, aren't they?
extremely deep. In fact, almost everything actually did arise with us. The Nazi eugenics laws came after the model that was passed by Cold Springs Harbor, and actually some of our states had passed very similar laws to what the Nazis passed in Nuremberg for racism. The idea for the IT farm cartels, that was originated from the I forget the German name now that he the head of it. I think it was Dusseldorf. He was laying a cornerstone for American Bear, and he was intrigued by the Rockefeller's use of trust, and he modeled the cartel system in Germany after the trust in this country. So a lot of this, what was Nazi, was actually originated here. Especially their military machine. There's an example in the book of Curtis Wright. He was asked not to reveal the secrets for dive bombing, and the president of Curtis Wright, in a letter that's documented there in the book, suggested to his salesman, well, don't say anything about it, but we can demonstrate the technique at the Paris Air Show. What better way of telling them than have them watch it?
Well, and the money was coming from this country, and you had the support of people.
The money was funny. It was funneled through. Well, Henry Ford was one of the big ones that we know for sure. Averill Harriman probably was in on it, and the DuPont family. It's amazing that Hitler wasn't known outside of Munich when Henry Ford gave money to him. Now, there has been a book since come out since I've published the Nazi Hydra. They suggest Ford's Nazism, fascism came from his secretary. I'm not certain of that, but that was their take on it. And again, DuPont was funneling money in there, and Hitler wasn't known outside of Munich. The Nazi Party had never fielded a candidate yet in the German legislature. How did these big industrials that's not known for their charity start giving him money before he was even had anybody in the office? Well, that's what amazes me.
Prescott Bush was, Hitler's banker, and his activities with the Averill, what was it, the Harriman Brown?
He was an employee there at Brown Brothers and Harriman, and he was given, what was it? It was the original company to manage that was in Germany. Eventually, he managed all investments in Germany for Harriman.
Now, this Hamburg American line, the story behind that was interesting.
Yes, that served as a conduit for Nazi spies and intrigue and propaganda. It was also purchased awful funny after it came out of receivership. I'm not sure, and nobody seems to know the full story there, but it was some shenanigans going on there. It wasn't a outright purchase.
Now, these American industrialists were actually literally arming the Nazi war machine.
Henry Ford actually, besides building trucks for the Nazi army, Wehrmacht, he actually helped Hitler stockpile various war materials before the war. Standard Oil was another one that supplied, Standard supplied both Japan and the Nazis with gas throughout the war. They got away with it by shipping it to Spain, and then through Spain onto Switzerland and then into Germany.
It's shocking, really, the degree to which the Third Reich was being helped in every way. A reading here from the book, after Remington Arms signed a cartel agreement with IG Farben, a U.S. Senate investigation found the Nazis were all equipped with American guns. This was known at the time.
Yeah. There was shipping of arms over, a lot of them went over the Hamburg America line, but they would dock outside of the Dutch ports, and they'd be loaded on the ferries and then ferried through Holland on into Germany. They'd be putting on ferries. They didn't need to go through customs. And it was all Remington Arms, revolvers, and then Thompson submachine guns.
And this continued during the war, too. There was still a Rockefeller, for instance, in South America, actively engaged in transporting things to the Nazis via South America, wasn't he? And also refueling German U-boats. I mean, tell us something about that.
Well, yes. I mean, the Rockefeller sham company in South America was fueling the Nazis. Like I said, they sent oil first through Russia, and then when Russia had joined the Allies, they switched and sent it through Spain. But they would supply them. They was fueling the U-boats right off the coast of Africa. And on the return trip, the standard tankers in South America was distributing propaganda leaflets and probably Nazi spies as well.
And isn't it also the case that there were Ford and GM plants operating during the war in Germany, and with all the bombing that was going on, somehow they escaped damage? Why was?
That is true.
How could that happen?
The plant that was damaged was the one at Pleasley, France, and that was actually bombed out by the RAF. It wasn't the American bombers got it. What's amazing is the big Ford plant, one of the biggest ones, was in Cologne, Germany. Cologne was the first city targeted by 1,000 bombers. The Ford plant set at the outskirts of the city, right against the banks of the river. In those days, they didn't have precision bombing, but they could easily have followed the river as a landmark up and bombed it from there. But the plant only damage that plant had received was a couple artillery shells that had fallen short during the last stand before Cologne fell. And as a matter of fact, to show how little damage it was, Cologne fell in mid-March, and the armistice in Europe was signed in mid-May, and the day that the armistice was signed, the first truck from Ford was rolled off the Cologne plant.
Wow. Did the American people have any knowledge of this at all? Or was this just kept secret? Was there a media blackout on the fact that this American company, Ford and GM, were actually operating in Germany?
Yeah, there was a media blackout, and I told you about the Pleasley plant that was bombed in France by the RAF. The American papers carried pictures of it on the front page, clear coast to coast, but they conveniently failed to identify it as a plant owned by Ford because they didn't want to lose Ford's advertising dollars.
Wow. Well, so many...
That's basically why none of the big corporations was ever exposed.
Mm-hmm.